everybody. Welcome to another episode of Room 1710. Today, I got a very special guest with me. She's a songwriter. Oh, excuse me. I said songwriter. Writer, producer. Also, you say you do performance. And she is the host of Polyamory podcast, where she talks about, her lifestyle of polygamy. I'd like to introduce Astra. How you doing, Astra?
I'm doing well.
That's good.
I do like that you're manifesting a career as a songwriter for me. So maybe that's next on the list.
It is.
I do a lot. So.
It's not too far from poetry, right? And that's something that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am a poet, and I've been teaching myself ukulele.
What is that?
It's like that tiny, tiny guitar. The ukulele? You
like the Hawaiian?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What made you get into that?
It was just something that I could travel with. I go on excursions in my van. I don't know if you saw that I do like traveling a lot.
Yeah,
So I take that with me. So I have something to do when there's no internet. And it's like small, so it's not like a whole guitar.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. No, I never even tried to do that. Probably maybe when I was a kid, but that's cool. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even know where to begin on how to play with that. Well, for the audience people, I kind of want to let you know how I met Astra. On my last episode, my friend Amy, she was telling me about a podcast that she was supposed to be on, but was never on. She told me about it. Ryan.
My podcast?
No, Ryan's. She was actually supposed to be on Ryan's podcast.
Okay, gotcha.
What is it? Ryan's Crush Corner?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, so, ever since I started doing podcasts, I'm always interested in listening to other people's stuff. Mm-hmm. And so on the very first episode was you. And so what, drew me in.
I was the first one.
Yeah, you were the first one.
I forgot. I get to be honored all over again.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was good. Why did he stop?
I don't know. I think it was something that he was trying. He does a lot. He does cartoons. He does music. He does stand up. Like he's like me, like where he's always trying something new.
That's good.
And it was a cute podcast. I liked it a lot too. But there's only so many people you can have a crush on.
No, there's not. I can have a crush on many, many, many women, and forever. But on there, that's when I heard you talk about polygamy. Right? I'm saying that right? Yeah.
Well, for me, it's polyamory.
Polyamory. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what's the difference?
Polygamy is like a style of marriage.
Okay.
It's like the legal term for having many wives. And polyamory is like the social term for like having many lovers, no matter your gender or your legal situation.
Okay. Yeah.
So what I do is polyamory.
Polyamory. Yeah, I know that there's different ones. I don't remember the names, but there's like different
like categories of how you can get married and all of that.
Yeah, or relationships. I think do you know the one that's called where it's only the guy can date other women but the women can't do anything?
Well, when it's marriage, that is polygamy, but there's also something in the polyamory community that we call the one penis policy.
I remember hearing you talk about that on your podcast.
And that means that only the man does it and then the woman just like chills at home or whatever. Dang. Or it can hook up with other women, technically. Yeah.
But no men. Oh, yeah, one penis. Okay. Mm-hmm. So how did you get into it?
I myself, the origin story of my polyamory journey is I got married to my high school sweetheart. And we traveled for the military because he was in the Army.
Did you get married at 18?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay, wow.
I got married right at 18.
Jeez.
And we were approached by swingers. Apparently... In the military, I didn't know this until I was a spouse. They are fucking. They are fucking each other. They're fucking outside of their marriage. When people are deployed, they have their whole other side piece over here. Like it's non-monogamy is like really, it's a part of military culture. And that's how I discovered it was, me and my husband were really hot. Everybody was like, okay, well, we got to fuck these guys. And I was really into it and he wasn't. And so that was like a conflict in our relationship. We ended up separating for other reasons besides that. But then after I got divorced, I was like, okay, well, let's see what's up with that.
Yeah.
And so I started doing what I called open relationships. And I didn't know the term polyamory yet.
Okay.
And I had known about swingers, which is where people like swap partners because that's what they had been doing with us in the military. or had been like, trying to get us to do. And so I was like, well, maybe I can find people that are swinging. And so through the swinging community, I found the polyamory community. There was actually like another comedian that was polyamorous when I was doing stand up, and I heard him make a joke about it. And I was like, that sounds like what I want to do. And so that's when it started. So it's been probably like 8 years now that I've been practicing polyamory.
Oh, wow. So how long were you married for before your
like
interest?
a year.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in and out. We were we were together from middle school until we got married, and then as soon as we did that, we were like, "What the fuck have we done?"
Yeah, that's a young age to get married to. I mean, it's pretty normal, but I can't imagine. Oh man,
Very
getting married.
Texas. Like, oh yeah, let me just marry my high school sweetheart, and I'll go into the military. And thank God I didn't get knocked up.
That's good. Yeah. Because I remember you talking about it was a bad marriage, right?
Yeah, little blessings.
Yeah, hey, it all works out. Yeah. And you're right about it being a Texas thing. I think I remember like someone being 17, married in high school. And I thought that was crazy, but yeah. So so you're you're married to a military man, very common where you're at. It's a whole year. So you get divorced. And so you just been in this lifestyle since.
Yeah, I was on this trajectory to have this like super classic life, like white picket fence, we're going to have kids, like have this career. And I'm an artist. I was like making jewelry and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And as I was kind of exploring that for myself and experiencing it, I was like, I do not want a traditional life at all, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky at my young age that I had the awareness to know like, oh, I kind of feel trapped by this. Like there has to be something better. And when I came back to Houston, it was really just about me kind of having an adolescence that I had never really had. I grew up really sheltered. I, was never allowed to leave the house. And even though I myself was a really adventurous, free-spirited person, that was never really supported or fostered in me. So I spent, the first half of my 20s really just living my life to the fullest. And on that journey, I found that I was really interested in multiple relationships at a time and how to do that ethically. Also kink, which is something we can talk about if you want to, like doing kind of, you might think
like
of
S&M?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a kink.
Okay.
There's also other kinks like feet or kink. Kink is like the umbrella term for like stuff that you like to do in bed that's kind of non-conventional.
Like fetishes?
Yeah, or fetishes.
Okay.
So I got into that world, and it's a Venn diagram, all of these things that I'm trying out for myself. But I didn't want there to be something about my emotionality or my sexuality that I had undiscovered. Like I wanted to figure out what it was I wanted, because I didn't want to end up in an unhappy relationship like the ones that I saw around me. I needed to know myself in order to do that. Yeah. So I, as a single woman, which is not really common, most polyamorous people are couples that have opened up. Yeah. And I was just out there like single, like trying to figure it out, getting into all of these like uncomfortable and new situations. And through that is when I decided to do the podcast, Polyamory podcast. Because at the time, I mean, now it's way more popular. There's so many resources. At the time, there really wasn't a lot of content out there that I felt like I could resonate with as a single person. Yeah. And so I made it myself. And through those interviews, and even, the people that didn't get on the show that I just would talk to about polyamory because it was something that they were passionate about, I was able to find like my unique perspective on relationships. And I think whether you're monogamous or not, that's really important to do.
So I guess also another question I have too is you're in your 20s trying to figure it all out. You're just...
Even still,
right?
Even still.
It's going to be forever. It never ends. But I guess how come, what made you label yourself as sorry, and I'm always going to get it, polygamy, right?
Polyamorous. Yeah.
So sorry, I'm gonna keep
That's
on
okay.
getting it wrong.
Well, polygamy is such a more common like culture word. Like you hear polygamy way more than polyamory, which is like a whole other thing.
So how did you know that you were that instead of you were just dating around? Because you said that you weren't committed to anyone. You were just out there, just dating and stuff like that. So how did you know that early? Like that's the lifestyle that you wanted to be?
That's a really good question. And I think that's so important for people to discern the difference between like, I'm just sleeping around and looking like, and if I find a partner, I'll settle down, or am I actually like polyamorous? Yeah. And for someone with like, wandering dick syndrome, it can be hard to be like, oh, like I want to have all these relationships and I want to communicate about them openly, but I don't know whether or not I'm non-monogamous. For me, it was really clear based on the people that I was meeting and the things that I was reading about polyamory. Polyamory is defined as ethical non-monogamy.
Ethical.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like a form of ethical non-monogamy. So is swinging, technically, because everyone's honest about what's going on in the situation.
So that's what makes it ethical.
Exactly.
Okay.
So no one is ever hidden from the reality of what's happening.
Okay.
And of course, polyamorous people can fail at this. But generally, if you're doing it in the ideal way, you're being honest with everyone so everybody knows. And for me, that was the difference because I've always been a really open communicator. I really don't like dishonesty, even though I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart. I really like to have, Scorpio. I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart.
Oh, okay.
I like to have really open and honest conversations about where I'm at. And this was true even when I was monogamous, to my partner's chagrin, because it's like, people get passive aggressive and there's things that they haven't really processed yet that they're not ready to talk about. And I'm always just like coming in guns a-blazing. And as I was meeting other polyamorous people, I was like, these are people that I want to have relationships with because they can talk about difficult things. Yeah. They can have conversations about how they feel, what they want, what their boundaries are. And that was so new for me to be able to feel like I was having that reciprocated. So that level of honesty was something that I really desired. And the other reason that I chose the label of polyamory rather than just, dating around is that I want to have multiple relationships for my whole life. Like I want a child rear with more than one person. I want to have community around that. So for me, it's a part of my identity. I consider it an orientation, which is still up for debate. Like, do people choose polyamory or does it choose them? It chose me. Like, I did not make this choice. I have been like this my whole life. And to have a word that like encapsulated my behavior so well, like that for me was just so liberating.
Yeah. I hope I'm not kind of putting your business out there too much, but I know this information just from your podcast,
yeah,
right?
My business is out.
Yeah. So this is all from your podcast. It's all out there. But I remember you talking about how when your mother came out to you. So, and was she just gay or was she bisexual?
Gay, yeah.
Okay. So did she have a similar type of lifestyle? Because I remember you hearing you say that, you've been like this your whole life. So was it kind of that lifestyle maybe a little bit introduced, or it was just your mom was just like, hey, I like women?
Yeah, that is so sweet to hear you bring that up because I've been spending a lot of time with my mom recently. I've been like staying at her place.
That's great.
With her and her wife. And yeah, I do that. I do tell that story because her coming out to me was a huge, it was family drama. It was Thanksgiving conversation. Yeah. Oh my gosh, not only is she a lesbian, but she told her daughter. And, everyone's
at a young age. How old were you again?
I mean, I was 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But, I'm the same kid then that I am now. I was so curious, up in everyone's business, always asking questions like, who's that girl? You said she's your roommate. I don't believe you. Literally, I was a dick. And so it's not her fault. But
she had no choice but to come clean.
Exactly, which is good because I get my honesty from her. She doesn't hide shit, and she has an age-appropriate way of talking about everything, even to this day. So she has actually told me since then, she never told me about any non-monogamous stuff when I was younger. She was just like, I'm a lesbian, drama. And then I was having a conversation with her maybe 4 years ago, and I was telling her about this couple that I'm seeing and giving her all my polyamory, tea. And she was like, it's so funny that you are into that now because when I was coming up as a young lesbian, it was really common for all of the girls to be hooking up with each other and not really talking about it. Yeah. And she was kind of framing it in this kind of it's the 90s and there's a scarcity of lesbians that are out. And so it's a little more common or acceptable for them to be hooking up with each other in that way.
Because of a numbers game, you said?
Yeah. But I mean, from what I've learned talking to the people that I know in the kink world and in polyamory, the queer community did a lot of work around polyamory and non-monogamy before any straight person ever did.
You think so?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I say that because it's, it's in religion and everything like that. In other countries and what religion am I trying to think about? Muslims.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I was kind of curious. But are you just talking about as far as like within United States?
Yeah, like a Western ethical non-monogamy.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. You're right. I understand that.
Yeah, just the lineage of polyamory that I come from, that I'm a part of, has its roots in, queer communities that were kind of playing with not just gender and sexuality, but also monogamy really early on.
Okay. So what are kind of like the biggest like misconceptions about, the poly lifestyle? Because, most people hear it, at least for me, the first time I like really remember hearing about an open relationship was like rumors between, Will Smith and Jada. So that was that's just me, right? Mm-hmm. But
I forgot about that. That was great for us. We loved that.
Well, they never really openly, said that they were. I mean, I could believe it, but that's their life, If they want to keep it private, I respect that. But yeah. And then, most people don't agree with it, right, in the Western, because they always think it's like, oh, this is just giving someone a reason to just cheat. And so is that just really real? Like, are cheaters, should they all really be in the poly world, or what's the misconception about that?
Oh, I would hate it if all the cheaters decided they were non-monogamous. That would ruin the dating pool. But it is, it's one of those things, like, some people, this is just like such a big topic to unpack, because cheating happens in polyamory too. Like,
really?
Yeah. So let's say I have a partner, and our rule, like for us, so that we can feel safe doing this, is that we will text each other before we sleep with anyone. We'll just like, hey, I'm going home with someone else tonight. I'll text you in the morning. That's like the request that I make of my partner. My partner agrees to that, and we're cool with that.
Yeah.
Then I don't hear from them all night. I wake up in the morning, no text. I call them, they don't answer. Then they finally come home at lunch, and they're like, oh yeah, I hooked up with someone last night. They just cheated because they didn't tell me. Even though we're in an open relationship and we're polyamorous, they breached an agreement of trust. So that's what cheating looks like in non-monogamy. There's many different ways that can happen. Like, if you agree to use protection and you don't, if you agree that you won't fuck friends and you do, like stuff like that can be cheating.
I can understand that. What about emotional cheating? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Emotional cheating, I don't think that happens as much in polyamory, because the emotions are not, like, there's no boundary around, you can't feel this way about someone.
Okay.
Whereas in monogamy, which is why I'm not going to tell anyone what to do, but monogamy is kind of dumb. It's like, oh, if you even feel that way about someone, you're cheating. In monogamy.
You think so?
Yeah, you can have like whole ass emotional affairs. Unfortunately for me, I know what that's about.
Well, what do you mean by feel? Are you talking about like crushing, or?
Oh, no, not like crushing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought you meant like as far as just like being attracted to someone. I'm like, no.
Although sometimes when I'm on the internet, I see people like that are really possessive. I know that's not the standard for monogamy, but they will be like, oh, I won't let my partner even look at anyone.
Yeah.
That's not the standard for monogamy, but it's like kind of acceptable in monogamy sometimes. Like, people are like, oh, like if they look at a woman, I'm upset. I just personally can't understand that because of where I come from. But
look, I've dealt with that myself. It's a headache.
It's a lot. And I think that just being more open to ideas like polyamory can help people like loosen some of those ideas. When we talk about like misconceptions, like one of the misconceptions is that you can't cheat. Another misconception is that everybody's just sleeping around. Yeah. That's not really happening
like
either.
Swingers, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're fucking. But there's a lot of conversations in polyamory, and that's like the standard for polyamory, is that it's all about honesty and open communication. And I think that there are definitely people now that like are totally like, they're just slutty. And they just want to be slutty. Yeah. And then they use the term polyamory, and then they dishonor their partner in that dynamic. And then people are like, oh, well, polyamory is just cheating. When really they only have a relationship with like one or two, probably Sagittariuses, that like fucked around on them with someone else. And now they're like, oh, well, that's what polyamory is. And I think it's just because the word has gotten popular enough to where fuckboys can use it.
True.
And, fuck girls and fuck non-binary
people.
There
you go.
Yeah, all of the fuckeries. Yeah.
Have you ever cheated?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I had a habit of cheating, actually, before I knew what polyamory was.
Wow. You said before or during?
Before.
What about during?
I haven't broken any agreements since I've been polyamorous, no.
Okay. Is it hard to find men who are comfortable with that? Because, like, it's hard just dating someone and just getting to any type of, agreements. So, like, how is it dating in that world? Because, yeah, go ahead.
It's I mean, all dating has its problems, like as you said, like
Yeah.
it's hard dating in any setting. I'd say for me, like my biggest, this is a personality flaw of mine, is that I end up with these guys that think that they're polyamorous, and then they're
Yeah.
like, oh no, I can't do that. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, what have I done? And that's like a relationship pattern. But within the polyamorous community, it's a lot of conversation. And I think what's really like a breath of fresh air is like when I'm with polyamorous people, like in community, I'm not like constantly being hit on. I'm not like constantly being asked for a date. It's not the same. There's not like a scarcity mindset because everyone is like a little more satisfied. Like there's just more. I'm also in like kinky spaces too, so this might be like leaning more towards that direction, but like everyone's kind of getting what they need and they know who they are. There's not
Yeah.
this like insecurity around it, and there's so many more opportunities to have like fulfilling conversations where it's like, platonic intimacy is really important, especially to me.
Yeah.
And like that line between like are we dating and are we not can be what prevents people from having things like cuddling, intimate conversations, closeness,
Yeah.
emotional support. And I find that like in polyamorous community, I mean, I date all genders, but the men are like they're cool. Like
Oh,
they
okay.
have what they need, and it's not like when I'm with monogamous men, sometimes I feel like they're just like so fucking needy.
So let me ask you, and you might have said it earlier, so forgive me if I'm not listening correctly, but do you ever, I was researching everything, right? So, and I learned one word is primary. So do you choose a primary in polygamy, or is it just, you're just dating multiple people? There is no primary.
You mean for me personally?
For you personally, yes.
So I used to be a hierarchical polyamorous person.
Hierarchical. Okay.
And that I would have a primary and then I would have everybody else. And that did work for me at the time, but it's kind of like the word I use is mononormative, like you might say heteronormative. It's kind of like mononormative.
Okay.
And it wasn't really serving me because I actually have like codependent patterns. I go to
Okay.
Codependence Anonymous and I'm like working through my shit. And when I'm in those hierarchical dynamics, my codependency like comes out to play. So for me, actually shifting to what I call relationship anarchy, which is a word you may have come up on your journey. Relationship anarchy is where there's no hierarchy and everybody has just like as much energy as they need at the time. So I wouldn't be like, oh, this person has more time than this person because of this or whatever. Which is easy for me because I'm single-ish.
Single-ish.
I have 3 lovers, but I don't live with anyone.
Currently. Wow.
Yeah, I don't have kids with anyone. I don't share a mortgage with anyone. It's
Yeah.
easy for me to say like, oh yeah, everybody's equal.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who's starting from like a marriage, they would probably implement hierarchy, and I don't judge people for that. I know plenty of people that do, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's just about what works well for you at the time. I myself, it just doesn't feel right for me to say primary because I'm my own primary really right now.
You know what? I do remember you saying that now that I think about it. And I guess I was going to probably even ask a question, I guess, back then when you had a primary, was it kind of hard really, or how did you just choose your primary, right? You're dating multiple people. So it's like, how are you making this choice to where it's like, this is the person you probably spend, let's say, we'll do the 80-20 rule, right? That's in marriage. So this person, you decide that this person gets 80 and everybody else just gets 20. Like, how did that person get that job?
Well, usually it wasn't a decision. It was like a happenstance.
Okay.
Like they just asked me out 3 nights in a row. Like they just were like, hey, you want to stay for the weekend? They just took me on a vacation. And then it becomes like, oh, we happen to have just spent, 80% of our time together. And that's like a pattern for us.
Gotcha.
So that's how it would happen for me. I don't know if there's anyone like doing the MySpace top 10 situation where they're like, oh, this is my, you're going to fall off the line because you didn't whatever. But I'm sure there are people that do.
Yeah.
People are petty in all relationship styles. So
100%. People are people.
yeah, exactly.
So, and then also, how did you make that decision that you were going to marry this lifestyle? Because you said that you want this until you're old, right? Because that was actually probably one of my other questions too, is just like, when people get older, I guess you probably typically tend to slow down and you just want it more simple. but you personally feel that, this is just your life continuing. So it's just like, how, let me see, I'm asking the right questions, but it's just like, how are you so for sure? Like, I'm a very indecisive person, right?
What's your sign?
A Taurus.
Oh, cool.
I'm on the cusp though. I'm an Aries and Taurus, but if anything, I'm a Taurus.
Yeah, cusps aren't real. You're a Taurus.
You think so? I hear that they're not, but I feel that I am, because I'm really different than some of my Tauruses.
Next time we'll look at your whole chart. We'll figure out why.
I think I know. Well, okay, yeah. I think I want to say I know my moon. My moon is Aquarius. Yeah, Aquarius.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, we can look at the chart
Anyway.
But yeah. So it's just how did you know? How did you know like this was for you?
Yeah.
Was there a moment?
I've been thinking about this lately as well, because I do my whole life is surrounded like in this, it's like encapsulated in this thing of like sex and love and what does it mean to be in love and have sex, and like all of my work, all of my writing, all of my sex magic stuff, like everything that I produce is around that. And I had to ask myself, recently I like quit my job to pursue my dreams. Like, do I really want to dedicate my entire fucking life to this? As something like that people see sex and relationships as so shallow, and as something that's like kind of like hedonistic or automatic even, like this idea that, oh, you just find someone and you settle down and it's like whatever, like you're dating and then you're married. And like, to me, it is just such a rich, complex experience. Like there is so much emotion there. Like we work through our childhood trauma through our relationships. We discover who we are when we're in relationships. Like there's really no way to separate all of the stuff that's going on inside of us with the stuff that happens in relationships. So yeah, I do think it's really important for me to dedicate my work to that.
Yeah.
And when I'm thinking about polyamory, like I don't see myself ending up with one person. Like I see myself in community with people. And to me, when people talk about polyamory as complicated, I think it's complicated to try to make it work with two people in a household.
You think so?
Like in this economy? Are you kidding? Like
that's true. That's true financially.
Who the fuck can afford a house with two incomes anymore? And it's not just that. Like I really don't think that that we're really supposed to raise children with just two people in the household. Some people are raising children with one person in the household, but like, kind of biologically, like we're pack animals. And a really good resource for this is Sex at Dawn, which kind of talks about the roots of non-monogamy, like anthropologically. And I do think that there's some examination we can do about how anthropology is influenced by current social norms, but that does talk about like how we evolved from bonobos and how bonobos raise children in this kind of dynamic. And it has like some specific information that I kind of pull from. But even when I'm just in community with all my polyamory people, I'm like, I don't want to be in the same house looking at the same face for like 30 years. That to me just seemed like to be suppressed. And some people are really monogamous and they're cool with like to them, they're not suppressing any part of themselves to be monogamous. So but for me, I would be.
What's romance to you then? What does that look like?
That's a complex question. I'm pretty classically romantic.
Okay.
Like any rom-com you could probably pull from, like Flowers, Dinner.
That doesn't turn you off, like this is not real life, or you don't connect with it, like.
I love classical romance. I think it's really sweet.
Okay.
But to me, it's just like, I don't think exclusivity is a part of that.
Okay.
Like, oh, only you forever. Like, ugh. That's the part where I get grossed out. But only you tonight? That sounds great.
So you're just like one with the wind.
Yeah, I think like everyone, exploring. Yeah, when everyone feels their most free, that's when I feel most comfortable.
Yeah. I'm monogamous. That's personally how.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How did you decide that?
Well, I guess you could just say it's part of who I am, right? It's a choice, and I just probably look, for me, I could probably be like a very emotional person, and I just kind of find that beauty in just being with one person. I feel like multiple people, that's too much for me. Like, it's hard just dating. I can only imagine just dating multiple people, at least probably, for a long period of time, right? Because things get complicated. At least in my life, the longer you know someone, like you said, we're working through our trauma and stuff like that. And so for me personally, I'm not married, never been married, but I feel like it's just easier for me to focus. But one thing that I do like, just by listening to you talk, and then also just, people in the poly world, it's nothing I can I could see myself in, but I do love how y'all challenge monogamy, and I think it should be, right? Because, it's something that's taught to us. We kind of go along with it. Don't ask any questions. Why would you kind of ask questions? Maybe you just saw it and you loved it. But I think conversations like these are good because you should constantly remind yourself of why you're choosing your life, why you're making certain choices and stuff like that. And one thing I'm envious about, within your community is the honesty and the communication. Typically, I know everybody's going to lie. Everybody's going to, be dishonest. That happens. Not everybody, but that happens. That's a part of life. But, that's a huge part of, your community. And really, when you think about monogamy, you're kind of taught, or probably, what's the psychology word? Negative. What is negative reinforcement? To lie, to help protect and stuff like that. And I think just being honest with someone is like really important, especially if you claim that you love them. But also, I love that how y'all are able to receive that honesty. You're open up to it. And so, I find that great. And I remember you talking about that and just how important it is not to be jealous or what are the other? Possessive. Man. So how do you let go of that thought of being possessive, right? Because like not sharing, like I don't know. I don't want someone else to connect with someone who I highly connect with, right? Because then it's that, I guess, another thing that you mentioned, insecurity.
Yeah.
It could be insecurity coming up. Somebody could, just easily just take your place and they'll just leave. So what kind of gives you the confidence within this community?
That's a great question. I think that I have a lot of innate confidence. I'm very blessed in that way. I'm an only child, so that helps. But the other thing is that I really prioritize myself in all things. And which is ironic. I struggle with codependency. So when I notice that I'm not prioritizing myself, I know that there's something wrong. I know that there's an insecurity or a pattern that's coming up, and it's time for me to refocus my energy so that I'm not, overly controlling or dependent on this person. And that all comes from self-awareness, self-reflection, and self-love. And for me, that's just rule number one in life. And I don't think that people really get taught how to do that. I think that a lot of people get taught that they are here to fulfill a role. And I think so it's really important to talk about right now because of the way that gender dynamics are.
Yeah.
Everyone's man pays for dinner, woman cooks and cleans, you have to stay home with the kids, and I have to have this high paying job. There's all this weird gender stuff, and it's all these roles.
Yeah.
And what's under that is these are the things that we have to do in order to be loved. So it's not just this this economic thing, which I think all of those gender roles are just capitalist propaganda. They're not real. But under it is, if I behave my gender perfectly, then I will be worthy of a partner. And then under that is, I don't feel worthy of a partner if I'm not doing these tasks. Right? So all of that comes down to worthiness.
Yeah.
And that, I'm very spiritual. I get that from my spiritual practice. And it's not easy because we are in a culture that profits from us hating ourselves. So we have to, in the same way that I'm challenging monogamy, I'm also challenging a grander system of us, taking this beautiful skill that we have of interdependence, this skill that we innately have to be able to give and receive love and support. And it silos it into these couples, and it kind of sits us around here, and it says, okay, you can't share appliances, you can't share lawnmowers, you all have to buy one. That to me, it just seems like all of this thread.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking about relationships, I really see it through this grander lens of like humans are relational creatures, and how am I using that power in a way that is like not just beneficial to me, but beneficial to my species, like to the community, to the people that I love and I care about.
Yeah.
I know that it's not, it's not everybody thinks that way. I know a lot of people are monogamous, and not every polyamorous person is out to like collapse capitalism with their love. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know how relatable that is, but I do think that like just starting from a self-love place, like if someone's interested in non-monogamy, that's like the first step is like, be sure that you have the support and love for yourself, because people will run around on you in non-monogamy too, like it does get hard. It is still challenging. And a lot of my feelings of, insecurity and possessiveness had to be unpacked by just remembering like, I don't own anyone. Yeah. And I'm grateful to even be alive. So I try to just like live from that space.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, when you talk about we don't own anyone, right? But there's that sense of betrayal when someone doesn't live up to their agreement.
Yeah, exactly.
And so does that still hurt you too?
Like, oh, yeah. I mean, that's, when we were talking about ways to cheat in non-monogamy, like that's happened to me. I've had people do that. Yeah. Especially because I'm always like, oh, yeah, they want to be polyamorous. I'm going to teach them and they're going to kill it and we're going to be happy forever. It's like you can't really, if someone's not ready, they're not ready. So that's happened to me before. And I do feel deeply betrayed. To me, it's like I give everyone the option to do whatever they want as long as they tell me. So when they don't tell me, I feel so betrayed because it's not like I said you couldn't. It's like I said I just wanted to know. So that has really broken my heart. But people's behavior is always a reflection of them and not of me. And so a lot of that heartbreak has its roots in that worthiness. Like, oh, they did this to me, so I'm not worthy of it. I'm not worthy of their love or their honesty. Yeah. The truth is I am worthy of it. They just don't know how.
True.
They don't have that skill, or they have a weird pattern that's making it hard for them to do it. And it's not my job to fix, save, or heal them. So I'm going to go get laid elsewhere and we'll both be happy.
I guess let me ask you probably like your style of dating, right? Is it typically like short term? Do you have like a time limit, or it's just like out in the open for anything? I figured probably like if me personally, if I was in a poly relationship, I would have, my primary, and I would probably be like 2 to 3 months because what was that you mentioned? It was something energy.
Oh, new relationship energy.
New relationship energy. Yeah. So it's for me, and I that clicked, right? Because I'm dating, right? And so
you feel it too, yeah. You're like, oh my gosh, new relationship. Who am I? Like,
yes, that spark, that energy, and I could see myself being that. I would never be that because I enjoy going deep, right? Look, I forgot my question.
Yeah, I heard your question. Your question was about like the longevity of my relationship.
Yes. Do you make a subconscious choice?
Yeah, about like when it ends. I mean, all of us are victims of having NRE, and then it wears off, and we're like, who is this? Like I don't even remember I was attracted to you. Yeah. And then infatuation wears off after 2 years. That's another psychological thing that we're battling. I myself, one of my partners I've been with for like 4 years, and we underwent something called a relationship transition. It's another thing I talk about on the podcast.
I think I remember that.
And it's like, it's not that we broke up. It's just that our relationship became a different kind of relationship. So we were like codependent. He was my primary. We did that for 2 years. And then I was like, hey, I can't do this because I'm healing myself and this doesn't fit into my life anymore. And so we separated for like 6 months. And then we came back together as like lovers. And I'm staying with him now. Like, this is my lover. It's been 4 years that we've known each other. So even though our relationship has changed over the years, like that's a really long-term relationship. We're really communicative. We have good boundaries. Another lover of mine was a similar thing. We were dating. They thought that they could be polyamorous. It wasn't really working for us. So now we have like a much more casual relationship, and that's been 2 years now. Okay. So I would consider those pretty long-term relationships, 4 years and 2 years. And then, my third lover, like we just started talking and we are in NRE, like hella like in each other's business, texting every day. And that relationship will probably transform. It's very kinky. And in my circumstance, what I'm really trying to do is just make sure that I'm having like the most amount of enjoyment, and so are they. And so I like to do a lot of checking in. Like, is this still working for you? Is this still working for me?
Yeah.
It's hard to say whether or not I make a subconscious choice, because that would be subconscious. I wouldn't even know. But I think I actually prefer like long-term deep relationships. But for me, the priority isn't necessarily to get them to stay with me or to get them to commit to me. It's to be sure that like we have a really rich friendship, and then everything else on top of that is kind of a bonus. So like our relationship is primarily like a really deep, supportive friendship. And then also we fuck and they take me on dates, and like that's the other stuff that we do. And for me, that's kind of how I engage with my polyamorous relationships. And then if we decide to transition out of romance and sex, then hopefully we can stay friends if we didn't fuck each other up too much.
Is that the same? Is this like the same thing as friends with benefits, or it's a little bit less complicated, I guess?
I mean, friends with benefits is it's a term I struggle with, because most of the time when people say that, they're not doing the friendship part. They're
think so?
only doing the benefits part. Oh, yeah. Like, if you come over and you fuck and you leave, that's not a friends with benefits. If you text me at 2 a.m. because you were drunk and you were just out with the boys and then you, like, leave before morning, that's not friends with benefits. Like,
okay,
if we're not actually able to, like, go to the movies and go to the bar and not have sex, that's not friends with benefits. So this, like, the friends with benefits thing, I think is just a total psyop. I don't think it's real. So I don't use that term. And I also, like, because
that's fair.
To me, friendship is the benefit, because everyone's always trying to fuck me before they're trying to be my friend. So, like, to me, if I can get a friendship out of it, like, that to me is the most beneficial thing.
Talk your shit. I like that. Yeah. Your friendship is the benefit. It ain't just about the body. I hear you on that. It's just so, I got you. Were there any, like, surprise boundaries that, you know, you had while in your journey that, like, came about?
You know, I've done a lot of work around this, and I think, like, it's been something that I haven't really spoken on much because, you know, I don't do Polyamory podcast anymore. That stuff is in the archive.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't know that.
It's still super informational. Everyone should listen to it.
Yeah.
But I was really kind of a bitch about STIs.
What's STI?
STD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're called STIs now because they're infections, not diseases.
Oh, did not know that.
Yeah, fun fact.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've done a lot. You know, I'm a sex magic practitioner and educator, and sexuality is like my main area of study. And I've worked with a lot of different facilitators and coaches and teachers around sexually transmitted infections. And in polyamory, that's like everyone's number one threshold. And something that I didn't realize was that I would use that fear of STIs to control my partners. And so instead of actually saying like, oh no, I have like a jealousy around this person, I would be like, oh, like there's an STI reason that you can't do this thing you want to do with them. And it was really like, like this kind of snaky way that I was controlling my partners. And when I realized that through my work around STIs, then I couldn't stop seeing it everywhere, because I'm in all of these like polyamorous support groups, and all these people are like, oh, but what about herpes and HIV and blah, blah, blah. And they act like it's the end of the fucking world.
Yeah.
And now that I'm in that world, I'm like, well, I mean, there's really nothing at this point that can kill you, like medically, scientifically. But we put all of our fear in the most hidden place, and that's STIs. So we take all of this shame and this fear and these control problems, and we put them in the STI place. So that's something that I didn't expect to find out about myself. And it's something that I think there's not a lot of really good sex positive information about. So that to me was really surprising. And I'm really grateful for that.
You think that's a common thing, or the fear of STI, or you're saying that's just you? Was it you, or you're saying everybody kind of does it?
Well, it was me, and then I started to notice that it was happening around me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, I'm in these groups, and I'll see people post about it, or even just in conversations with people, they kind of, like, bring it up. And now that I'm a facilitator and I work with people one-on-one, I can really kind of see by their body language, like, normally it's not just the STIs they're afraid of, but it's, like, it's this energetic thing where they get to put the stuff that they don't want to actually say.
Let me ask you another question too. Something I thought about is there a certain type of personality you have to be in this community? Like, for instance, can you not be an introvert and be in the poly community? Right?
There's so many introverted polyamorous
Really?
people. Oh my God, yes. They all play Dungeons and Dragons and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering. Yes, there are a bunch of very quiet nerds in the polyamorous community.
Well, I mean,
they're not doing podcasts, so you probably haven't met them, but they're around, yeah.
Okay. Because I was curious. I mean, if you're out here, with multiple partners, I'm assuming you have to, put yourself out there and a lot, right? Like, you probably have to be, I'm assuming, convincing. You have to kind of, sway these women. Or maybe it's a choice that, it's a community, so maybe it's a choice they already made, so you don't have to do any work. But I guess I was just thinking, people probably wouldn't want to be involved with them because they're, you probably wouldn't get too much out of them. You wouldn't get that energy, that new relationship energy out of them. It would take a while to get it, right? Because for some introverted people, it takes a while to open up. So that was kind of my question.
Yeah, I think people have like this stereotype of, this polyamorous person that's like really outgoing and sleeping around, because that's what they kind of think of when they think of non-monogamy, as someone who's like kind of like a sexual, not like aggressor, but like a promiscuous person.
Yeah, just free.
And it's kind of a little bit of a stereotype, because I'm promiscuous. I'm a huge slut, and I'm polyamorous, and I never shut up about it. And there are definitely many like me that are slutty and proud. But there's also, it's just like if you meet an introverted person as a monogamous person, and you're like, wow, like, they are so interesting. Like, I can see their energy. Like, I really want to get to know them. Like, and people do fall in love and have really rich relationships with introverted people. And I think what's so funny about that is like the internet is so beneficial for polyamorous people, because like I'm not in the grocery store finding out that people are like, I have a tattoo even that says many loves on it, because I want people to know that I'm polyamorous. We don't know each other.
Is that like the logo or the sign, I guess?
Well, polyamory means poly is many and amory is love. So it's many loves.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
This whole time I thought poly meant two. Oh man. I'm telling on myself.
There you go.
That's what it means. Wow. Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah. But the internet's really helpful. There's a lot of community events as well. And, I'll be able to tell like, okay, that's their husband and he's obviously not like very outgoing, but people will go up and talk to him. It's one of those things where it's a community. And if you can't find them in person, you will find them in online forums.
Okay.
There's a lot of dorks.
Could you see yourself trying to be with someone who is monogamous?
Oh, bitch, I have. Oh, my God.
I know you have. Times. I know you have. Could you see yourself doing it again or trying?
We call that a monopoly. That's when there's a mono-poly relationship. I won't ever do that again. It's not for me. I think it's really beneficial for people who are already in a relationship and they're kind of opening up, and one person really just does not care about polyamory, and they're like, hey, babe, love you, go get laid. I don't want to. I would love it if you do. And if the monogamous person is really into it and fine with it, then that can totally work. For me, I want to be with people that have mutual interests. And
absolutely.
Obviously, I'm obsessed with relationships and sex and love and all of that. So it would be very difficult for me at this point in my life to be with a monogamous person who didn't like really understand or resonate with where I was at. But I still hook up with monogamous people. It's just, I'm not going to go down that road. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's just not really, it's not good for my emotional patterns to be teaching someone that I'm with. That's a huge Virgo problem, by the way, is you get into a relationship with someone and all of a sudden you're teaching them everything.
Oh God, you're a Virgo.
Run, Virgos. Like if you feel like, oh, well, I'll teach them how to do this and then we'll be happy. No. If they wanted to learn, they would have.
Oh man. Virgo women are probably the most I've ever dated. Like Virgos.
Beyonce's a Virgo.
I know, that's my wife.
And she has a Scorpio moon like me. And so does Will Smith.
How do you know she has a Scorpio moon?
I've looked at her chart.
Oh shit. Did not know that was available.
I love Beyonce. Oh, yeah, you can look up any celebrity's chart.
Oh, man.
Yeah, next time we're going to do an astrology episode.
So what do you love about relationships? You said you love relationships. Like, what is it that just brings you joy about it?
I really love people. I love that everyone has their own unique experience of reality. And I love communication. I'm a nerd for communication.
Okay. Let me ask you this other question. How do you know the difference? Because you date any gender, right? So how do you know the difference to categorize people between, romance or, however you want to do it in friendship? Like, do you kind of separate those two? Are there like some friends that, hey, you can never kind of cross over here, even though you're open? Do you put those lines, those boundaries?
That's a good question. Lately I've been really working on this for myself because like I want to be just as much of a slut for platonic love as I am for romantic love. And I want to cultivate that because, one thing being raised in the way that I was is that like community wasn't really instilled in me growing up. And now that I'm older, I'm realizing how beneficial and necessary community is for like a healthy life. And I'm like, man, I kind of got fucked over on that one. So I'm trying to learn to cultivate community. And with that comes more complicated dynamics like this, especially because I'm a slut and I'm poly. So it's like, okay, we're obviously attracted to each other. And because I'm a communicator, I like to communicate up front, like, hey, I have a crush on you. I don't think that we should like really go that way because of what you have going on in your life. I just want to let you know that I find you really attractive. Like that would be an example of a conversation I would have with someone like that. And ideally, I'm very lucky that I keep good company. A lot of people will say to me like, hey, I'm attracted to you. I'm okay staying friends. How do you feel about that? Yeah. And I get to kind of have autonomy over that. Yeah. And in the kink world too, like doing kinky stuff, like I get tied up by people that I would never fuck, and through that kind of exploration of relationships where it's like, sexy things happen, but our relationship is platonic. Like I get to kind of experience all these flavors of support. And I think it really is kind of this gray area where, conversations are just necessary. Like, where are our boundaries now? Like, oh, that made me feel some type of way. What are we going to do about that? Like, oh, I saw you play guitar and now I'm in love with you all of a sudden. Like, stuff like that just comes up. And I think really what makes it complicated is when people don't talk about it. Yeah. Like, oh, maybe I should go for the kiss. Let me talk about it with my friends before I talk about it with them. Like it's kind of that stuff that I think makes it a little more complicated. It's, I'm sure, kind of annoying to be like, oh my God, I have to put myself out there and say something about this. But for me, that is fun for me. I like that. Yeah.
Sounds like you're very fulfilled.
I am. I mean, there are parts of my life that are a total shit show, but I do not think my relationship life is the part that's a shit show. That's the part that's going really well.
I guess let me ask you probably one more random question because I know we got to head out soon. But in your opinion, what's more like black and white? Would you say monogamy or the poly? Like, because I heard you mention like gray areas. So what do you think has more gray areas in your personal opinion?
It's so hard to answer that. And it's probably because everyone sees things differently, right? I'm sure for some people this way or that. Everything is a gray area to me. But I think what's beneficial about monogamy, and this is kind of starting to break down as we evolve as a society, is that it has some rules in place that were written long before we were born. So we don't have to write a whole new rule book. Yeah. We already kind of know. And then we get into relationships, and I think this is the mistake that monogamous people make, is they assume, oh, my monogamy and your monogamy look the same. That's not true.
Explain how so. If you have an example.
Yeah, kind of like what we were talking about before, like what constitutes an emotional affair. Am I allowed to watch porn? Am I allowed to chat with a cam girl? Am I allowed to go to a strip club? Am I allowed to, be friends with people that are the same gender as you that I'm attracted to? And we know that, like stuff like that. Yeah. And different people have different levels of that. So I think that monogamy is as much of a gray, blob of interactions as polyamory. But because we make so many assumptions in monogamy, we don't always see it that way. We see the black and white, and then the gray kind of gets filled in as we get closer and closer together,
Okay. That's a good answer. That's very insightful. I didn't think about that, like those rules and regulations. And I guess, within your community also, there's not too many rules. It's kind of open.
Yeah, choose your own adventure. Like you get to make your own rules. Yeah. It's not built in.
Yeah. And what I love about your podcast is, you get very personal. You tell your own life story. You have guests. And just in the very beginning of your intro, great intro too. Like I need to learn how to do intros like you.
Let's chat. I'll definitely help you out with
that. I'm gonna have to get lessons. But I do like that how you specify one that you're not a pro or I forget what you said.
A professional therapist.
A professional therapist. And you're not there to try to convince anyone. You're just telling your story, telling other people's stories, and if anyone's curious, like, hey, here's some questions. Let me just answer just in case you're curious. So it's real insightful just to, dive deep into that world because, I knew nothing about it. And I think, like I told you earlier, the only time I came about it was when this one woman, talked. It was her and this other girl, and they had a house husband, right? And so, when I first heard it with my friends, we're just like, he's using y'all. Like, that's the life. Like, you're not working and you have 2 women at home. Like, doesn't get any better than that. But
I would love to be in a house for a fight.
You said what?
If they were fighting, I would want to be a fly on the wall because 2 women that work against one man who doesn't.
Right. It can get pretty messy pretty fast.
Well, I'll say this. So, I do have a podcast now. I have a podcast called Dear Divine Diary.
Dear Divine Diary.
Okay. And it's a diary entry about my magical practice. I talk about sex magic in my relationships. Okay. So if you want to check that out, you can. Oh. And then if you do follow me on Instagram, which you do, I have an ebook about polyamory. It's called Conscious Polyamory. And so if anyone is curious about it, wonders if they're polyamorous, it's really good to do with a partner because it has like journal prompts. Mm-hmm. So if you're like, hey, we might want to explore this, it's like a really great way to kind of introduce yourself to that. So if any of your listeners are also curious.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. I know this is our first time meeting, and so it's just like you were very open to just meeting. So it's like I appreciate it because I was very excited about this. I was like, yo, I have a lot of questions.
Yay, I'm so glad.
Yeah. But thank you very much, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Talk to y'all later.